When candidates run for office, they immediately think of all the sexy stuff. The logo, the website, the yard signs, all the things you think about for politics. They miss those admin details. Their head's in the clouds, but they forgot to put on their pants. So we're going to talk about how do you put on your pants. I've got my expert here with me, Ryan Kilduff. He's our operations marshal here at CORE, and he's done this for hundreds of candidates over the years. Glad to have you, Ryan. Thanks for joining me.
I'm glad we're going over this.
Yeah, so these immediate details are incredibly important. Let's start with the legally required things, because of course if you screw that up, you're in trouble. If you're running in the state of Illinois, what are those legally required documents and things you need to file and prepare?
It's simple. It's your D1 and your D2.
Okay, so you start with that D1, and that's to track contributions that come in. The committee will track the contributions that come in, where you spend it. The D1's what sets that up, right?
Yes, so that'll be your statement of organization. That'll say who's on your committee, where your committee is located and such.
Okay, so how do you fill out that D1? What are the things you need to be able to fill out a D1?
So you'll need a P.O. box. You'll need to identify your chairman and treasurer. You'll need to identify where you'll bank. You don't need to open your bank just yet. And then it'll say the committee's purpose.
Okay.
It's fairly simple, but if it's your first time, it's kind of complicated.
I mean, I know a lot of campaigns are tricked up on that chairman and treasurer. Like ultimately, especially for chairman, you might want somebody a little more well-known in the community if you can. We always say it's better to not serve in these roles yourself as the candidate, and ideally not a family member, though it's possible. But if it's the candidate and their spouse as chairman and treasurer, to someone looking at that, like someone maybe down in Springfield who wants to cut you a check, you don't look like a real campaign if you're your own chairman, your own treasurer, right? So you want to look for somebody else?
Yeah, it's beneficial to have somebody prominent in the community, whether it be a business owner or a friend that's an elected official. And your treasurer should have some finance accounting background so they understand the process and make the process simpler for you, let alone filing the state paperwork.
And ultimately, if they don't know how to file the paperwork, you could have an honorary treasurer on the D2, and then you could assign a deputy. There's a space for that.
Correct.
On the form. The deputy could be the one who manages the books. The treasurer could be a local banker or business leader, or someone who's respected in the community, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I know some banks have required the D2 to be filed before they would even let you open up a bank account. So let's talk about bank accounts just so we can make sure we get that locked in. I know to open a bank account, there's a requirement that you have to file with the IRS, right? What do you have to do there?
So before you go to the bank, there's two things you need. You need your filed D1, like Collin just suggested, and your EIN number. That's a quick form that would be filed with the IRS online. Just some personal information you put in and you're all set.
I know when I started this, the getting the EIN was a pain in the butt. Now it's this easy form. They walk you through it. I know we have some advice on our website because there's some tricky questions in there, but overall it's pretty fairly straightforward, right?
Correct, yeah. I mean, it's all about banking purposes there, so it's just making sure you select the right boxes.
Yeah, basically say it's for banking purposes, no tax liability, make those items clear when you're filling that out. And you need that IEN or EIN, and then you need your paperwork, your D1 file with the state. You take that into the bank and you can open up a bank account.
Yep, you're all set then. Otherwise, they'll ask you for, committee meeting minutes and such that don't exist and you don't need anyway.
Yeah, and you can push back if they end up giving you that kind of requirement, or just find a different bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, banks are tough. I mean, you don't want to go to a Chase bank. That's a national bank. They don't like political accounts. You want to go to a smaller bank that's more local because they're going to take you quicker. They're going to give you more attention. They may not have the best online access, but you want this to be easy. You want to be able to get checks quickly, and the big banks are just going to give you a tough time.
Okay, good advice. I like that. All right, so now you've got the paperwork filed with the state. It's semi-similar with the FEC, right? Federally, so on the federal level, there's also a form that you file there, correct?
Yep. There's two with the FEC, but they're basically just splitting up what the state forms are.
And give you URLs just so it's easy. If you want to look some of this up, find these forms. For the state, it's elections.il.gov.
Correct.
And then it's fec.gov, right, for
Correct.
federal. So they have a lot of this up there. There's a portal for candidates. They'll walk you through it. So the good news is it's fairly straightforward now.
All the forms are fillable PDFs or they're fillable online. They try to make this as easy as possible.
Yeah, that's great.
Quick Google search finds you tutorials as well.
Okay, so we filed. Now we've got to stay up with our ongoing requirements. So in the state of Illinois, we've mentioned the D1 is your initial filing, but now you have to file a D2 every quarter. You've got to file A1s as well. What's the deal with those?
A1s are basically for contributions over $1,000. Those are meant to be filed within 5 days unless you are 30 days preceding an election, and then it's 2 days.
Those are business days, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So you want to get those in and keep all those organized. There's different rules for how to handle a check, for example, is when it's deposited in a bank, and online is when it actually registers the contribution. So you want to get all that organized, but this is something that can slip, any candidate can slip up on.
Yeah, and we've seen it a lot. So to clarify what you're talking about, in terms of when a contribution is received, a contribution, if it's digital, is counted as received when it comes through online.
Correct.
A contribution via check is counted when it's deposited in your bank account.
Correct.
So ultimately, if you're trying to prepare to run for office and you're not ready to file yet, you can collect checks because it's only counted when it actually goes into the bank account, correct?
Yeah.
So keep in mind there's that little bit of leeway on the way that you collect the funding. All right, and I briefly touched on D2s. That's quarterly, right? Every quarter those need to be filed?
Yep, every quarter you got to do your contributions and expenditures. It's not fun, but you have to get it done. Every contribution over $150 is reported, and same with the expenditures. It's a simple process. The IDIS system, IDIS, makes it simple for you. It's just a matter of going through the process to get all that data in.
And this is, so it would be what, April, the 15th of the next month. So April 15th, July 15th,
Correct.
Ongoing. Unless it's a weekend, then it gives you till the next Monday.
For sure.
It's typically when it's filed. And you mentioned IDIS. That's the program or system, I guess we call it, that the state makes available to you for free as a candidate. So you call down, they'll help you get it set up, look at your password or username, and then you could run this all in the online, that portal that they provide for you, which is secure and surprisingly easy to use.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they haven't changed it probably since the 90s, because it works. It does a lot of this behind the scenes stuff for you. You just got to tell it where the contribution came from and how much, and it'll put it in the right place.
I like that Ryan's making me feel old. I used IDIS 1 and IDIS 2. They're on IDIS 3, so don't talk about it not being changed.
It doesn't look pretty, but it does the job.
I lived through IDIS 1, all right? Don't do this to me. These grades are coming in way too fast. All right, that's D2s. On the federal side, with the FEC, they also have quarterly reports, but during election season, it's different, right? There's pre-election reports. There's a few additional reports that they require.
You'll want to monitor that calendar closely because you can get lost in it because there's a lot of different reports and different types of reports. So that's something you should definitely save off to the side.
Yeah, and they give you a calendar, so they make it pretty easy, but it is a little different federally than it is state, so keep that in mind. If you're running for Congress or for Senate, those are the two federal offices you might run for unless you run for president, I guess.
Yeah.
But FEC does make it very easy. They give you all the details, so that's good to see. All right, we've talked a lot about disclosure forms, and this is tracking contributions and tracking where you spend your money. Really important, but I don't want to just do our whole video on that. So let's talk about other things the campaign needs to get in place. Candidates call you, he says, hey, or she says, hey, I want to run for office. What are the first couple things you check off that aren't like, I know we talk branding and messaging with them as well, but cutting those things out, just operationally, what's that first thing you might go to?
I want to see a master list or a house file, as some people like to call it. This is just a list of everybody you know. I mean, if you've ever planned a wedding or a first birthday party, you have those contacts. You want to put them in one place because you want to be able to communicate what's going on in your campaign. And that takes time. I would sit down, do that, because that's the first thing you want to do, because you're going to need to be able to multiply yourself over this campaign. You can't do this alone. That's the first step.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, in the history of the many candidates we've worked with, you can almost put them in two buckets. The ones that take the master list seriously, the ones that don't. And this bucket wins a lot, this bucket doesn't win a lot. And I'm not going to say it's only because of the master list, but it's a pretty big indicator. It's one of the major things that if a candidate takes this seriously, they move themselves over to the bucket that actually wins more. Because ultimately, if you want to put out emails, you want to get volunteers, you want to find yard sign locations, you want to get donations, invite people to an event. There's a whole bunch of things if you want to do in the course of this campaign. That master list is the beginning of all of those steps, of all those outreach opportunities.
Yeah, you can't live without it. I mean, the best example is fundraising. How do you know who to invite to your event if you don't have them in one place? Your team can support you by getting them there if they can do the promotions, but if they're not in a list, how are we supposed to invite them?
Yeah, a master list is huge. Sit there and don't just pull from your Google documents or where your Outlook contacts might be. Sit there with a blank spreadsheet and a glass of your favorite beverage and just work through it for a couple hours, because you'll be shocked the number of people that you know that never made it into your phone or somewhere else.
Yeah, don't limit yourself. They don't need to live in the district to donate or come knock on doors with you on a Saturday.
Or make phone calls or text messages
just somebody that could be there to support you.
Someone you have a tie to, they should be in this list.
You're providing valuable information. You want people there to know what's going on because then they're more comfortable being there physically to knock on that door.
Other parents of Little League kids, if you've got a kid in Little League, or people at your church, your place of business, associations you're a part of, organizations you're a part of. I mean, a good candidate, they've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names in a list like this on day one.
Yeah.
It's huge, a big thing. Okay, operationally, I know there's some key things that you'll talk to with candidates about, like making sure you have contact information all lined up. Talk about that.
Yeah, you want to be presentable. You want to purchase your domain. If your name is available, purchase that right away and purchase every variation you could possibly buy. Set up an email, Ryan@RyanKilduff.com versus Ryan@Hotmail.com. That just looks more professional. Presentation matters, and that's how your logo really takes off. It's got to look good, but if your email and your website and these basics don't look good, then how does everything come together?
And you want people to think they can trust you to lead government at the local level, at the state level. If you're coming to them with a AOL email address, or what's an even older school one?
Hotmail, Outlook, what is it? Was Net?
Netscape.
Yeah.
We had a candidate with a Netscape. That was pretty funny. Sorry to call you out. You know who you are. Yeah, you want to make sure you have these details all set up. And by the way, the other side, if they're smart, they're going to think about this. I mean, how many opponents of ours have we seen that didn't capture their name and their domain, and we lock it in, and now the whole election, someone searches for that name, and instead they get our client instead of their own name.
Yeah, it's a huge advantage to have it.
Yeah, so find your domains.
It's difficult to remember, Ryan at blah blah blah.com when you can just do RyanKilduff.com.
Yeah, lock in those domains fast. Contact information, so you want to make sure you have an email address set up, and don't do like something generic, email at my domain. Use a name, use your first name, even if it's not the email you're going to use. Make it more personal than just having it be a generic inbox. You want a phone number, right? You want to lock in a phone number. You can do that through Google Voice typically.
Yeah,
right?
there's a ton of apps now, but Google Voice makes it super easy. Just get that set up and it'll transfer right to your phone, so they don't need to use your personal number.
Yeah, and you want to have a phone number for people to call. Not everyone just uses digital. There are some weirdos like me who pick up the phone still, so we want to have that available for people. Social media handles as well.
Yeah, you want to get that all set up. Just lock it in. It doesn't have to be published, but you can get it set up.
So Facebook, Twitter, maybe even looking at Instagram. What else might you look at?
Anything you can think of. Anything that you want to be active on. I'm not suggesting specific platforms, but if you feel that you're going to use it or your kids use it, you may want to get that locked in.
At the very least, to own it, so no one else does it and causes you problems in the course of the campaign.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and it's going to come in handy down the road.
Yeah, okay. So that's contact information, social media profiles. We've talked about your master list. What about committees? So we mentioned chairman and treasurer on your D1, but a lot of campaigns, they'll try to put a few committees in place behind the scenes to sort of lead the campaign, to provide advice to the candidate, to provide support to the campaign. What are some committees you might suggest?
Yeah, I mean, you got to invest time in committees because it takes time. This is the long game. So if you want to have, thousands of yard signs delivered or a bunch of meet and greets scheduled or good fundraising events, you want to have people that you trust to set those up. And we're going to need to allow them lead time. So you want to pick your top 5 priorities, whether that be yard signs, knocking on doors, fundraising events, and start to lock in people for that now, because then those things can get off and running, and then you can go focus on everything else that the day-to-day comes along.
Yeah, and there are 2 that candidates really tend to hyper-focus on. I like your idea of doing more, but you for sure need to do these 2. Have some sort of a campaign committee. Some people call it their kitchen cabinet. There are different terms for it, but people who are really invested in you. Have like a monthly meeting or call or something. Have it be an official thing where they can give you advice, support, because now they're bought in. They're part of something. They care about you. The second thing you really need to have is what's called a finance committee. It's a very similar idea, but these are people who are going to help you raise money. They're going to bring their networks to the table. They might host fundraisers for you. They might make phone calls for you. They're going to support you in a fundraising capacity. There's others you could do, but for sure put together those 2 committees because a successful campaign has both of those.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and you've seen campaigns that don't have that, and a lot of times they struggle, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no way around it. You have to multiply yourself, and getting people together, buying them breakfast, having regular monthly calls is the only way to make that happen.
Yeah. All right. So thinking through everything, I think we checked all the boxes. Obviously, there's marketing you need to do, like branding and messaging, and there's a lot more that goes to running a campaign. But from laying the foundation, anything you can think of that we might have missed that candidates or future candidates should be thinking about?
I think the big thing is you have to focus on this now. If you get all this done, then you can go be the candidate. If you let this drag out, then you're stuck in putting individual names and contact lists and getting new people involved. At the end of the day, this is something you just want to put into place and build on it, not keep building it.
Yeah, because we got a lot more. We're going to do more videos like this as we move forward, and there's a lot more you got to do to win a campaign. So your point's a really good one. Get this locked down now. Get this done now. Because if you're thinking about this in September when you should be doing petitions, or in January when you should be knocking on doors and holding events, you're a losing campaign. So get this out of the way. Lock this in. We need to talk strategy. We need to talk messaging. There's lots we need to do. We can't do it if we don't have this done.
Yeah, there's no way around it.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Ryan, thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.